Let's look at the event logging file format. Now, there's old version, new version, so you need to pay attention to those. It has radically changed. So this format has got some really clear, recognizable features. In the previous .evt files that were there, you could not gain access to those files. They were locked by the operating system while it was running. And when attackers would go after Windows systems, what was really good from a defense standpoint is they couldn't get in and corrupt individual line items on the event log. All they could do is either make the whole event log corrupt so it would be no good, or what they could do is they could inject individual events inside of it. If you had log wrapping turned on, where overwrite events as needed, they could get in there and generate a lot of events to push their activity out of the log, but usually intrusion detection systems would see that, they'd pick it up, and you had other mechanisms in your defense in depth strategy that would stop them from doing that kind of activity. Each event is logged. Each event that is logged has a decent header on it and a series of event records. The verbosity on different servers, how many events it will generate, can be turned up. Usually it's set, the registry setting value on this is from 0 to 5, and I think the typical is 1 or 2. However, a lot of configuration and security configuration management out there actually tells you to increase that verbosity. If you go to CIsecurity.org, you'll find out that they actually recommend higher levels of logging, higher levels of verbosity to get that granularity of what's going on in the machine. Individual machines, not so much, but servers definitely. They're going to have lots and lots of rich data inside of there. When we look at the Windows event log files themselves, they are old version .evt, new version, I believe it's evtx. It's stored in the configuration folder under System 32. They all have headers and footers in each individual record, but they're kept as one individual file. When we talk about audit policy events, we want to look at a couple of event IDs. Now, I will tell you that there's a whole course in event IDs. Any of the events that I discuss here are fair game for your exam. So when I talk about changing policy, in this case, disabling logging, anything that has to do with logging mechanisms as an event, you need to know all of those event ID numbers. So in this case, we want to disable auditing as an attacker. Well, the very act of trying to disable logging or changing logging, audit logging, will fire off this event 612. If you've got centralized log management tools, one of the things that you do is you install locally on the system, you'll install an agent, and that agent listens for particular events. It should be listening for 612 to fire that off and tell somebody in security they're trying to change the policy here. That indicates the presence of attacks in a lot of cases. In the system event log, any kind of changes to the operating system itself, usually these are hardware or software events or configuration changes, registry settings. Changes to the hardware configuration, device drivers simultaneously sends messages of event ID 7035. So each one of these elements in this set is fair game for your exam. Knowing your event IDs is critical to you. Also, by the way, you need to know them old version and new version. What do you mean old version, new version? Well, the original event IDs pre-2008 for a system event logging were in the 500s and the 600s. They changed the numbering mechanism after 2008 also for Windows Vista, and they actually added 4096 to each one of those numbers. They actually bumped the numbers up. You can find out why it's 4096 outside the scope of this class. Application event logs. All of the applications that are on the local workstation, if they're any kind of robust application, are going to populate events in the event log, especially when they fail. The only exception to this would be web servers and FTP servers because they have their own logging mechanisms. Other applications that are installed on the machine will populate events into the event viewer that are large, catastrophic, or important events, but they will probably also have their own logging mechanism for their own recovery process. Account management events are also critical. Records changes to accounts, group memberships, those are key event IDs. Creation, disablement, deletion of accounts are also key critical. Modifying which account belongs to which group, that goes back into group membership and management. Any kind of account lockouts and reactivations. Now, let's talk about this from a forensic standpoint, looking at the security log when we talk about account lockout and reactivation. If we were doing a forensics investigation against, say, a domain controller, an Active Directory domain controller, it's got the accounts database on it. And we were to see failed login attempt, failed login attempt, failed login attempt. Most of the time in those cases, 3 strikes and you're out. So we would see failed, 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 account locked out. What really worries me is not fail, 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 account log out. That means your security mechanisms are working. From a forensic standpoint, when I want to look at an intrusion, if I see a list of accounts and I say, let me see the list of accounts, and it starts with all the people that have a first name of A, all the people with the first name of B, C, D. Let's pretend that we have 26 people in our organization, and each person in our organization has their first name starting with one letter of the alphabet, A through Z. When I see fail, 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 lock, fail, 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 lock, A, B, C, and then on D I see fail, 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 lock. When I don't see the C account, Charlie's account didn't get locked out, maybe I see 2 fails and no lockout, I'm really worried about Charlie's account, because that means that they tried 2 passwords, the 3rd password they got in. I would really be worried about it if I had a really long list of thousands of users and I saw all the lockouts until I got halfway through the list, and then I saw a big gap, and then I see a lot more lockouts. What they've done is they've gone against the entire Active Directory database. They've captured all the usernames, and now what they're doing is they're pulling accounts. If they've got lots of lockouts on Monday morning, you know somebody's been attacking you. So as a forensics investigator, you might just be reviewing the log on a domain controller looking for these event IDs. That's why this is so critical to your success, both on the exam and in the enterprise where you work. You're going to be reviewing these logs and saying, that's exactly the kind of activity that occurred here. I've seen that now we've got these accounts as suspect. By the way, the solution to this is, if you see lots of failed login attempts and lots of lockouts, you want to go to your user population and get them to all radically reset all of their passwords at that moment in time. And all the accounts that are suspect, you want to do a deep audit on individual accounts and individual workstations at that point. Interpreting files and other object access. So object access means that we have files and folders that have auditing turned on. This requires somebody in systems administration or security to say, this file or folder is really, really important. And so therefore what I want to do is I want to turn on auditing for that file and folder. What would be a good file or folder in the enterprise to log all that object access, both success and failure? How about the home directory for a roaming profile where all the data is actually pulled down to the local workstations where you're moving to different workstations? How about the directory where all your network attached storage is intersecting with your Active Directory? How about logging right there? That home drive or that home profile, that data and that authentication, that's file and object access. Now, by the way, that's going to be a lot of events, so you got to be pulling them off quickly. When you're looking for access attempts, old version of the number, 560, 567, and 562. What would be the number after 2008? You've got to add 4096 to each one of these to get the new number. So when you're looking at those numbers in the event log and you're actually, if you're being tested on that, you'd go, okay, anything over 4096 probably gives me an indicator that this is a newer machine. This also causes a problem for us. Suppose we've got a bunch of Windows 2003 servers out there and a bunch of Windows 2008 servers out there. The old servers are talking the old event ID. The new servers are talking the new event ID. In our log correlation, we have to take this into account. Hopefully by now we've all upgraded to at least Windows 2008 R2. Current operating system is 2012. I think R2 just got released for them. So when we're interpreting file and object access, we need to know those event IDs, and we'll dig into more of these in just a minute.